Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll start this Bava Metzia daf Kuf Tes Vav. We're going to begin on Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah, which is almost in the middle of the Amud. Says the Masnesin, Almana, regarding the din of a widow, Ben she aniya, ben she ashira, doesn't make any difference if she's rich or poor. The din is the same, that in mamashkin oisa, that you're not allowed to take a mashkon from her. Shnemer, the pasuk says, "Osach boy beged almana." It says beferish regarding an almana that even though she owes you money, the din is you're not allowed to take a mashkon from her. We're going to see why in the Gemara. Tanoban almana ben she'aniya ben she'ashira in mamashkin oisa de Rabbi Yehuda. So actually, even though our Mishnah is just a stam Mishnah, the truth is it's a machlokus. Rabbi Yehuda's of this opinion that you can't take from a poor or a rich woman. When it comes to the shita of Rav Shimon, he says no, there is a distinction between a rich and poor woman. That when it comes to a rich woman, you actually could take a mashkan from her. So why? Why we allow that? So shiato chayav hasula, because when it comes to someone who is poor, you have an obligation that you have to give it back to her. And since you have to give it back to her because she's poor and she needs it, vi'ata masia shemra bishchenoiseha. The fact is you have to keep going back to her house during the day, night, in order to be able to return these things all the time. So therefore, it's potential that rumors can fly. And therefore, we don't want you to take a mashkon. Even though the truth is you should technically be allowed to protect yourself. However, we're also very concerned with her dignity. And we don't want people to start saying negative things that perhaps there's some inappropriate things that are going on between her and the malva. So, that must become to tell us, as we've seen throughout Shas, Rav Shimon typically will take a pasuk and he'll interpret what the pasuk means. And therefore, that's why the pasuk is saying, don't take a mashkin from an almana. And maybe we could even go so far as to say that a typical almana, because she doesn't have a husband, perhaps is more likely that she will not have money and she will be poor. And therefore, that's the reason why the pasuk just says it that way. But if you're talking about a wealthy woman, so why can't you take her mashkan? She doesn't need it. So you don't have to give it back to her because she probably has plenty of other things. So again, Rav Shimon is Darish Tam Nekra. We're going to see elsewhere that the opposite is the case, the Sanya. When it comes to a king, there is an Isser in the Torah that a person who is a king is not allowed to take too many wives, and Rashi over there says that it's referring to 18. Can't take more than 18 wives. Behuda Omer Marbahu, it's not true. He could take more wives. He can have many wives. He has to be careful of the women that he takes because he has to make sure they're women who are righteous women. And the whole issue is because the pasuk says that maybe that he may end up being stirred or turned away because she's a wicked woman. So if he chooses wisely and chooses women who are appropriate, so then the din is he in fact is allowed to do this. According to Rav Shimon, he says no, it doesn't even matter. Even if he has one wife, if she is not appropriate and she could potentially cause him to be stirred and turn to the wrong direction, he shouldn't even marry her. So, because what does the pasuk mean? It means even if she is as righteous as Abigail, who obviously is a tzadekes, it doesn't make any difference. You still are not allowed to have too many wives. So therefore, it's telling you you can't have too many 18, even Abigail wives. However, if it's going to be even one wife who's going to cause you to go in the opposite direction, you can't even have her as well. Which almost sounds a little bit like he's Darish Tam Nekra. But anyway, the kasha is being said that it seems like Rabbi Yehuda is clearly the one who's more Darish Tam Nekra. So Oyam Rabbi Yehuda loy darish tam dekra. Real Rabbi Yehuda does not darshan. He doesn't figure out what the pasuk is referring to. However, here you don't have to figure it out. The pasuk says explicitly, it tells us explicitly the din and the reason. It says it. V'shani hacha the mefarish kra. The pasuk says it befarish. V'lo yarbu nashim v'lo yosur. It says gufa in the pasuk the reason. So my time v'lo yarbu nashim mishum v'lo yosur. The reason why you shouldn't have too many wives is because of v'lo yosur. Rav Shimon michti. Be'alma darshin tam nekra. You're right. Normally he does darshin tam nekra. So lichtav rachamad lo yarbe. And therefore all you need to say is lo yarbe. That would be enough. I can figure out what that means on my own. V'lo be'ina v'lo yoser. I don't need that. The ana yadada. I know my time lo yarbe mishum de lo yoser. I don't understand that on my own because I'm darsh tam nekra. So lo yoser because of rachamad lo. So therefore, why does the pasuk go above and beyond? Because I could have figured it out on my own. Is a feel achas, if even one, a masiras liba harizel yisena. Okay, so that's the idea. Question TA 11. So TA 11 asks this question: Le'inyan ma darsh or shimatam dekro, le'inyan ma lo darsh ber hanafkamin ledina. Okay, it's a lot there. So inyan mashka in darsh Rav Shimon del mana ashir mashkinoisa. Too many. Okay. All right. Weiter. So let's continue now with the next Mishnah. Says the Masnisin hochoivel asorichayim. So the pasuk says they're not allowed to take a oreichayim. You cannot take this millstone as a mashkan because it's something which is oichel nefesh. You need it for the loiva needs it to make food. And if you do take it, over mishum loisase, you're over loisase, the chayim mishum shnei kelim, and not only that, you're also going to be chayiv for 2 kelim. Shneim lo yachlo rechayim v'rechev. So a rechayim, a millstone, has an upper and a lower component, and therefore, since the pasuk says both, if you would take the entire millstone, you're chayiv both. V'lo rechayim v'rechev bilvad amru. Not only these things, so therefore, it's not talking about dafka this millstone, but anything else. So which piece is which, for those who are not experts in what a millstone is? So Rashi helps us out. The top part is called the rechev, atachtaina rechaim. Okay, says the Gemara. Omer Rav Huna. Chaval Richaim. And let's say a person takes the Richaim, which, as Rashi helped us out, is the bottom millstone part. Lokishnaim. Mishum de Richaim, because you took the lower part. Mishum ki nefesh uchayvel. So there's a separate part of the pasuk, which, as we said, is ki nefesh uchayvel, which is more of an inclusive, like a lav shebechlolus, and therefore that is included as a second lav that you can get malchus for. Richaim v'rechev, if you took both the top and the bottom, then look at sholosh. Mishum richaim v'rechev, u'mishum ki nefesh uchayvel. Yehuda omer no. Chavlo richaim look achas. If you took just the richaim, the bottom, you're only chayiv for 1. V'rechev, if you only took one, the top, look achas. Richaim v'rechev look shnayim. What do you do with this pasuk? Ki nefesh uchayvel. As we continue to kuf tes vav on the base. So ki nefesh uchayvel is l'shar devarim hudasa. That's only coming to tell us shar devarim. The din is that there is an isser also on taking anything which is for oichel nefesh. Okay. All right. So now the Gemara asks the question: Lema Abai Rava. Maybe Abai and Rava over here is going to be actually Abai and Rava, which we're going to see, is put to the Rav Huna Rabbi Yehuda Kamefiki. So we just quoted Rav Huna and Rabbi Yehuda, so maybe Abai and Rava are going to argue, would agree as well. And this is a Gemara which we've seen numerous places. Yomi Rava, what does Rava say? Achol na, let's say a person ate na, which is partially cooked. This is referring to the Karban Pesach. So loikashtay, so in that situation, you get 2 malchus. Why? Mishum na. First of all, it says you're not allowed to eat it while it's partially cooked. And mishum kim sliesh. It has to be roasted. Kim sliesh is also considered to be a lav. Mavushal, if you didn't do it roasted but cooked, like a shtayim, mishum mavushal, because it wasn't supposed to be cooked, and mishum kiyim sleish. No mavushal, what if you partially cooked it and then you also cooked it? So like a shalish, mishum na, mishum mavushal, mishum loy soichlenu, kiyim sleish. So it sounds clear that Rava is going to be like this first sheet of Rab Huna, that he holds that even this general pasuk of Kiyim Sliyesh is enough to get Malchus on, which we hold that he must hold that you will get Malchus on a lav shabachlolos. Therefore, he must hold like him. Abaye disagrees, and he says Abaye Yomer ain't like in a lav shabachlolos, and therefore Abaye Solema Abaye Yomer Rabbi Yehuda, which we said there according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you take the Rechayim, you only get one Malchus. If you take the Rechem, you only get one. There's no Isser of Malchus on Kinev Shuchayvel because it's a Lav Shebachlolos. So maybe they argue in the same way. Somach Rabba no. Ana Diamri Afil Rabbi Yehuda. Rabba can say, I actually hold like Rabbi Yehuda. Even though in this situation I hold that you're going to get Malchus on Kiyim Sliyesh, however, I'm not going to hold maybe that you get Malchus when it comes to the general prohibition of taking this mashkan. So I can look at Rabbi Yehuda Hasam El Dachi Nefeshu Chayvel. When it says Ki Nefeshu Chayvel Lo Mashma Rechaim Berechev, it's not mashma those things at all. Hilkach Lashar Devarim Hudasa. So I agree to Rabbi Yehuda over there because Rabbi Yehuda is like, what is it? It's obviously it's not referring to these specific items. So Abul Hacha Kim Sliyesh Amayasa. What else is this pasuk coming to tell us? It's not a separate thing. It's the same carbon pesach. Shema Mino Lulav. It must be coming to tell you that's a lav, and therefore you do get malchus on that. I talk and hold like the sheet of Rav Huna. Maybe the only reason why Rav Huna says that you get malchus a third time, for example, if you take the upper and bottom millstone, because you have this extra pasuk, which Achar is telling you you're supposed to get malchus, so we continue to kuf tesa zayin manav, that's yiserahu. That is entirely extra, and therefore since that's entirely extra, it must be that the din is that it's going to be for a lav, and you're going to get malchus. And therefore, since it's extra, because what do you mean? The rechaim berechev, the millstone, is something also which is for oichel nefesh. So therefore, it is included. So therefore, it must be to tell you taki get a lav. It's not an extra lav because I need this pasuk for something else. Look at the sanya. We won't need it for the following. It says like this: in order to be violating the isser of having it partially roasted, it's only in a situation where it's the time of the carbon pesach. In other words, if you would somehow prepare this in this inappropriate way, only partially cooked, but it wasn't the time, it wasn't the zman of the roasting of the carbon pesach, you're not going to be over. And therefore, that's the reason why it's come to tell us this. It's telling to explain the only time you can be over an isser of taking the carbon pesach and having only partially prepared is dafka in a situation where you were supposed to have a roasted on, again, during a Pesach, for the carbon Pesach. But if you would have done it at a different time, then not. Okay, now let's look at question 10. We're actually going to continue a few more lines. Ma svar demand yarmedelikin al ki nefeshu chayvel al richaim berecha ve'in loikin al kim sli'esh al namavushal. So what's the nafkamina? So he says the nefeshu chayvel miyuter. We said that pasuk regarding to the mashkun is actually extra. Lulav mishum shar devarim, because right. So therefore, that's the reason we get malchus. Mashen king kim sli'esh aslamite malchus the namavushal. It's not when it's during the day. So it has to be dafka the time when the carbon pesach was supposed to be roasted, not again, let's say you do it a couple days before Pesach, so in that situation, you're not going to be chayiv. So the point is that since over there you need the pasuk, and therefore you can't use it to say you're going to be chayiv malchus, because you need the pasuk just to tell us an explanation of when you're chayiv for no. Okay. Tani Kavasi Rabbi Yehuda. So we're going to actually now bring a brace in support of the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda that says when it comes to the din of a mashkin that we're not going to give you malchus on kinefeshu chayvel. So says the Gemara, chavel zug shel saparim. Let's say you take as a mashkin something else, scissors. Now scissors, we know they can come disconnect. Therefore, there's two pieces of them. Now, let's say a person takes v'semet shel paros. He takes the yoke of a bull or cow. So chayiv shtayim. Zeb atzma v'zeb. Why? Because apparently the yoke was also the same type of a thing, that it's considered to be two separate parts. So chayiv shtayim. Zeb atzma zeb atzma no chayiv alachas. Let's say you only take one. So therefore, if you only take one, you only chayiv one. So how is that a raya? So l'chayra, because it's telling us that there's no extra lav on this lav shebachlolos of kinefeshu chayvel, and therefore you only get one. But tani idach, another brayso says chavel zug shel siparim v'tzemes shel parais yachol yehei chayiv alachas. You would think you'd only be chayiv one. Talmud lemer lo yachmer chayiv v'rechev. When it comes to this millstone, which is two pieces, shem yuchadim shnei kalim, they're considered to be two kalim, v'oisim ulachachas, even though they do one work, but therefore you have two parts to a machine that it's one machine, but nonetheless it's two separate parts. And you're chayiv on each one separately. Av kol devarim shein shnei kalim muchadim, even if they're two separate things, like scissors, for example. So that we will stop there, but let's look at question 11. Chavel zug shel siparim vehein shel parakim, they're pieces. V'chol echad kli b'fnei atzmai v'yosen hamolacha mishnayim kama malchus loika me'ezekra nilmad. So it just says over here you get two for each piece. Al kol echad mehem mishum kinefeshu chayvel. So he learns out from kinefeshu chayvel. So, which is kind of an interesting thing. He learns out from kinefeshu chayvel because we're comparing it to rechayim v'rechev. Okay. I wouldn't have said it's because of that, but nonetheless, that's actually because if you look at Rashi, it says chayiv shtayim mishum ki nefesh al kol echad. It says ki nefesh u'chayvel on each one al kol echad. Yachav shishneim srichin l'molachachas. Even though each one needs the same thing. V'chein semet shel paros chavel beis paros charshos im simdon. Let's say that you for two bulls that are plowing with a yoke. The hainunami kli oichel nefesh. Okay, the near be'enai shal oil shalhem shal prokim habe. So there's another pshat is that it's like a two-pieced, each like a yoke. They're two connected because you have two animals, but rather it's just that they're two separate pieces. Okay, fine. So again, you're chayiv on each one by itself. All right. And it says, Av koil, if you look at Rashi, it says, Midiyol v'hu merichayim v'rechev, shemamid merichayim v'rechev, chayim nami mishum shtayim kaim, v'lo sholosh. Hadar Rabbi Yehuda. So, and then Rashi says, Vim taimer mastis and kamaisel ma'yasya. Hachinam ishmais, shaminila mibraisa. Fine. If you skip down to the last line of Rashi, Hochi ashmi'ina na kamaisa, Gagatani bo behedya, chayiv shnayim. The fact that it says you're chayiv two. So let's look at question TB13. Chabel zug shel siparim behin shel prakim b'chol achas kli b'fnei atzmo b'oisen hamolachim mishnayim kama malkius loika. So I wrote chayim al kol achas v'achas tu mahaposuk rechayim v'rechev v'ulai shaloish machlokas menei shezel lav shebachlolois. Okay, so I threw that in there. So that is TB13. 13, which is very similar to question 11. Now, for some reason over here, we have TB12, which I don't see where this fell, but maybe this was in yesterday's daf, or 2 blot ago. It says, Loi sabo beiso avodovoito ma nilman min akasav el beso, which again is something which we learned way before. What does it mean from el besoi? So this had to do with shliach beis. That's what I wrote. The malva can't go into his house. Maybe. Shliach beis. O afil osir l'malva l'koach esachefetz mahaloiva b'shuk memnei sheyesh gezerah shem lokach mebeso ulai gama shliach beis and also l'hachnas l'beso shel loiva. It's very good. I think this is out of order. So I'm not sure why it was written as question 12. Adkan.